Welcome to the World Builders Anvil, episode 291, not 290. 5 invaluable tools in writing. Jeff's obviously, Michael's don't count towards the number. Don't know where to start building your fantasy world?
Do you need more? Does it make sense?
Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination.
This is the place where we will prime your mind.
Now, it's time to heat up the forge.
Break out the mithril ingots and hammer.
Welcome to the World Builders Anvil. I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
Let's sup from the muck of Java and build. Welcome back, as always. Tallying up the score, I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And adding numbers to the end of the list, I am Michael Miller.
5 plus whatever.
Before we get underway, we've been holding off for a few episodes, and I feel bad because we've had a lot of people join the
I know when I made the list, I was kind of like, I think we've waited too long.
Yeah. It's been a few episodes. So we wanted to welcome everyone who has recently joined the closed Facebook group, the Fantasy World Builders Undercroft.
Which is, of course, facebook.com/groups/Undercroft.
Which I would have said.
No, I don't believe you.
So welcome to the group, Michael, not to be confused with Mike. Also, welcome, Mike. Celine, Jeff, Walter. I believe that's Elise. I apologize if I'm saying that wrong. Ian, James, Ronnie, Anita. Is that a last name?
No, that is not a last name. That's an alternate first name.
Oh, Anita / Alex, I guess.
Yes, that's my sister, actually.
Oh, okay. Laura, William, John, Caroline, Louis C., Robert, Lucas, Oscar.
I guess so. Yeah.
Seems like an alternate spelling for Oscar. Ronnie, Stephen, Scott, Malik, Rachel, Justin, Cake, K-A-K-E. I'm going to go with Cake. Welcome, Cake.
That would be like one of my favorite names ever.
Yeah, I think that's definitely getting to the top of my list. Welcome, Sarah. And there's a page that liked us as well, which is Derek M. Koch, Monster Kid Writer. So welcome to the group, guys, and thanks for joining us.
What a great page. Monster Kid Writer.
I know. That is a good one, Monster Kid Writer. Shout out to Monster Kid Writer.
And I want to go check his page out later, see if there's good age-appropriate stuff for my child. So probably not.
Well, get your kid age-appropriate, would you?
Well, it's one of those things where they say it's like some people are like, oh, you shouldn't do anything imaginary when they're too young because they can't distinguish, which there's definitely some truth to that.
Is there?
But there is. They can't really distinguish between real and fake. The neuron.
No. Though I get that, but I do not see any negative to encouraging imagination.
No, and I still encourage. So I do still encourage imagination. So, but it's more like playing with people and stuff like that. And sometimes, it's me. I can't help talk about orcs and elves and dwarfs. So he probably gets a little bit of it, but luckily, because of that, we try to keep him away from violence and stuff like that. So
I think that's a good plan.
But getting away from my child rearing, that's a different episode. Maybe we'll do that 292. I'm sure everyone is looking forward to that. I want to talk about today about some tools specific for writers. Now, we've talked about tools before. We talked about mapping software, I know, and I believe we do talk about some basic tools I use, and some of those are definitely in here.
And I'm sure there'll be future episodes where new tools will become available that we enjoy and that we'll talk about, or just things that we find, potentially useful, regardless of whether or not we've taken advantage of them yet.
These are all for me like core things I could not do without. And I say 5 tools. One has 3 things listed in it, so that might be a cheat, but 5 sounded better than like 8. So
it's your show,
and they're all related.
You get to cheat.
They're all related. So, and I cheat all of the time. You want to play poker with me?
Do you know how to cheat at poker?
No, I have no idea.
Do you know how to play poker?
I know technically how to play certain kinds of poker. There's like 10 million kinds of poker. I know enough to know that. Like I can play 5-card draw or like a basic poker game. I know the skills too, but I've not played enough to know the actual stratagems.
I love poker.
So I have to set my wife down for about 20 hours at my Red Dead Redemption 2 game and have her rack up some money for me.
Well, it's funny actually, because I was talking, I was trying to teach Sarah to play at one point, and she wasn't getting into it. And it's always more fun when there's something on the line. Poker's more fun as a betting game. That's why, that's always, you don't see people playing poker for nothing. It's not as fun.
Yes.
Well, we got this really good poker app. I think it might just be World Series Poker. And for the tablet. And and then on her cell phone, and she's like, "Oh my God, I love this. It's so much fun." And she would get really bent out of shape if she'd be up to like $1 million and then like burn through all of it, but she really started to get good and understand the game better. Yeah. She still sometimes has a tough go knowing how to like use your chips to your advantage, like knowing how to take advantage of being a chip bully and knowing when to bet high or when to bet low. So that can be tricky. So.
Yeah, and that's, I have no idea about that stuff. So, but I do kind of know, like, what are my, I'm pretty decent, like knowing odds and stuff like that. Like, okay, I'm only one card off of a royal flush. Let me all in, and which is fine if you have the money to lose, I guess. But
we actually went to a casino night for her company where they set up a mini casino, and it was, a company-wide party. So, and we sat down, played poker, and we ended up being on the table all night long. It was a lot of fun.
I do kind of like the one better, not 5-card draw, and I forget what it's called. It shows my
Texas Hold'em.
Texas Hold'em, where you have the flop, because it adds a different element of spying on people and stuff there. Interesting stuff, and could essentially be a tool. You could like,
I was gonna say, but maybe today we're talking about tools. hustle a book publisher, and when they lose to you, they'll publish your book. That probably won't work, but seems like a long shot.
That's a very optional one. I probably wouldn't go with that technique. But the first one, and this is typically on every tool list I do, unless it's strictly applications, notebooks. You got to have notebooks, at least one with you. I do like to get them electronic, and some people like to go directly to electronic. I don't like doing that, and here's why. If you want retention, there's a lot of studies that talk about there's something textile about making the ritual actions with your hand while writing. And actually, cursive is actually better than even printing.
That I didn't know.
That's something that they've studied more recently, because Common Core initially dumped cursive because it wasn't on the test. And they started to find there's some actually negatives to getting people to not learn cursive. Shocker. It reinforces the language skills of people. So
I had one of my
to reverse that one.
I don't know if it was one of my current coworkers or one of the guys who had come in only to work with us temporarily, but we were signing our time cards at the end of the week, and I just quickly, signed my name, and he's like, "Wow," he's like, "I can't do that." I'm like, "You can't sign your name?" And he goes, "I could sign my name, not that fast." And he's like, "But I can't write in cursive." I'm like, "Really?" And he's like 20 something.
Yeah, no, it was a while ago that cursive started falling out.
I'm like,
I know there's actually, and this really, but I think it was in the UK. They actually, I don't know if it was across the country. I don't know how education works in the UK. The story I read of was out of the UK, and they're getting rid of analog clocks because there's too many kids who don't know how to read them. So they're going to get rid of them. And I think they're going to find a negative consequence. It's a good thing to learn. It helps show the spatial relationship to help people understand time better. So I think it's a mistake, but what do I know? I'm just a bullshitter. But notebooks I love because, one, I like composition notebooks, Rocket Wave notebooks. There are at least some that are the same approximate size. I like them because they're a little bit compact. You can take it with you. You can write in there. If you're using a Rocket Wave, you can actually then take a picture of it, and it will actually organize in your online storage solution.
Yeah, you can store it digitally.
Because that is kind of a risk, but the good thing is once you write it down, it helps embed embed it to you. So
The other thing I like about specifically the composition notebooks is they're durable.
As all heck.
I still have tons of them. I have literally boxes of composition notebooks full of old writing.
I've been in the process of scanning a lot of my old ones to get rid of them. The stuff I want from them.
Oh, I couldn't do it. It would be heartbreaking to get rid of them.
Mm.
I know that they're just gonna like end up in a dump somewhere once I die. But it's like, as long as I'm still alive, I want them.
Yeah, that's cool. I can appreciate that completely.
Because they don't take up that much space. Like I think I have 2 or 3 boxes, so they're in a closet.
It's like a comic book size.
Exactly. So
now the next one. This is so important. Creative friends.
I want to amend this one a little bit.
No, you can't. Hold on. Let me say my spiel. Then you can
go ahead. You say your spiel.
I'll allow you to speak so I can play video games. Creative friends. This is so important. Now, you should have don't just limit your friends or whatever. Michael and I are very blessed. We know lots of very creative people.
Yeah, we are blessed that way.
And the great thing is when you come up with an idea, it's someone you can brainstorm with, someone you can talk with, who, even when you see something crazy, won't necessarily judge you because they understand what the conversation means. If some of the people I worked with who I really liked, if I had some of the conversation I had with my creative friends wouldn't understand the purpose of the conversation and take it too literally and possibly get offended. So it's really good to have creative friends, even if it's like not necessarily like, you don't have to have an author friend, if you're a writer. It helps. I mean, think of like Tolkien and, C.S. Lewis, and there are a couple other guys I know used to get together at a pub in England. I think that's a good thing as well too. But in general, just creative friends to bounce ideas off of. If you think something's too crazy, run it by a creative friend first. Sometimes for people who aren't creative, they just need it maybe delivered in a different way than what you attempt. But they might say no out of hand if they don't see it in context. So creative friends, someone you need your own Michael.
Everybody does. The other thing that I love about bouncing ideas off of creative friends is they're going to help you modify your idea. Sometimes Jeff and I have had ideas, and then we'll start talking about it, and 1 + 1 = 5 in this scenario, because you'll end up coming up with something that's way better because there's just something that you didn't think of, or you might not have ever thought of, but your friend's like, well, what if you added this to that? Or what if you just put this little spin? It's still your idea. They're just, they're adding to the soup. You know what I mean? Jeff and I have done that a ton of times with games, with tabletop games. We have messed with stories tons of times. Now that's always fun. My only amendment to this, my addendum, it says creative friends. I'm going to say creative contacts, because it's sometimes good to have people who aren't friends that are creative that you can bounce off, because sometimes friends are not as willing to be blunt as somebody who doesn't have an emotional stake in the game.
Well, I kind of split off, and there's a different tool that might address your concerns. I don't think friends are great people to edit or tell you if your ideas are good. They're great for brainstorming, and even if it's not even necessarily directly related, sometimes just exercising their creative mind with people keeps it fresh, keeps it strong, like you would your muscles.
Well, my point is that they don't just have to be friends, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Of course.
Have creative others in your life that you can talk to. Friends, perfect, awesome. Just people that you know, or maybe a writing group that you get together with, fine.
Yep, fair enough.
Such as the Undercroft.
I'll just delete that. Yeah, and everyone in the Undercroft is your friend. Just remember that. Facebook.com/groups/Undercroft. All of your creative friends are there. If you need some, you live somewhere too remote. I've had friends especially in the service, who came from really remote areas. And sometimes it's really tough where you live, It's one of the good things about, that's why I like closed groups in Facebook, is it's a little bit better place to engage with people in a way you couldn't do 20 years ago. Well, you maybe could have, but I just, didn't figure out how to click on AOL fast enough to get there. Now, my next one is all about inspiration, or fleshing out ideas. Uncle Google, as I like to call it, or Auntie Google, I don't really care. Great Courses Plus.
Now, what is that? What is Great Courses Plus? I haven't heard of that.
Hold on, let me finish. And email. Okay, and these all work collaboratively. Okay. So let's say you have an idea, you're a science fiction writer, and you have an idea where you want to take a spin on black hole theory to, wrapped in, and it sort of creates the central theme for your book. But you're afraid that it's too flaky. You have no way to defend the position. You can actually Google professors, and try and email them and get and see if they're at least willing to have. I wouldn't just throw 30 pages of questions at them at once, but ask them if they're willing to to engage you in the conversation.
It is amazing how easy it is to get a hold of people that are really good at a given thing, especially if they are in the social media arena. Like if they have a YouTube channel, say, there's a guy who I was following on YouTube for a while for knife making, and I was having difficulty with the first project I was working on. I was able to get a hold of that exact guy. I'd watched tons of his videos. I learned a ton of things to do from all of his videos. Yeah. And I was like, hey, listen, I'm having this problem, blah, blah, blah. And he got back to me. I was like, I'm just going to shoot a message at this guy. Maybe I can get my question answered from an expert. And I did.
Or it's occasionally I get emails from people about world building. I try and answer each and every one of them. So that's great too. Email is a way to do it, though. The couple suggestions I have, though, if you approach someone, have a reason for asking that individual person. So kind of look at what they've talked about, look at what they teach to make sure that they're actually a good fit to ask the question to, and then mention that when you're writing the email. Hey, I've seen you've done some papers on this and some papers on this. I'm not an academic. I'm a writer. I had a few questions. I wonder if you could go over some ideas I have. And this is where, like Michael was saying, you can get to some creative contacts. And some people love doing that. And the thing about most professors, especially the ones who are publishing, is like everyone else, they want attention. Like a person who's selling a fiction novel, they want attention for the work that they do. And if they really help you out, I would, and you end up publishing something, give them credit. Hey, space consulting from blah. That won't help them in their job, but it'll probably make them feel better. And you probably should if they help you enough. Great Courses Plus is a streaming service I use. So think of it like a Netflix.
I think you've told me about this before. I think I just forgot the name of it.
Yeah. And I usually call it Great Courses. Great Courses Plus is actually the name of the streaming service. Great Courses has been around for a while. And what they would do is they would put together a course from a lecturer, which is a great way to find a lecturer who wants attention. And they cover every aspect of college, plus even smaller stuff like, you can learn how to do photography from a National Geographic explorer, or learn to do archaeology from archaeologists. Or at least I'll go over it. So if you're going into a subject and you get stuck, you have a name of a person you can try and contact the university that they work at as well, and say, hey, I saw you in Great Courses Plus, and I have a question, blah. But the questions should come in a separate email, only if they agree to do it. It's, I think, just kind of rude if you send most people a 30-page email, they're probably just going to delete it. Without reading it. So be courteous as well, but use Google to try and find answers, but also try to find the people that can help you solve the questions you have. It's great if you go to the Undercroft to ask questions. Sometimes, if it's about realism, people have different ideas of what that means. And a lot of times people who have really good ideas, even if it's maybe grounded in science, isn't really as good of an idea as they think it is, because they don't know the bigger picture of how things interact. Different sciences aren't, we break physics from chemistry, but they're really part of the same whole thing, which is like existence. So it's usually not quite as clear as saying, well, there's this one law in physics, so boom. If you want realism, you're going to need help. Google and Great Courses Plus to find the people to ask the questions to. Unless you have time to get a PhD in a subject, you're not going to really know. The next one, and remember, this is for writers specifically. You need readers, even if you're not planning to publish it. Right? It's like something you're just doing for yourself. Even if it's something you're doing for yourself, get a few people that you trust and like. Not people who are too close to you, because they might not give you the feedback that you really want. Unless you want yes man feedback, then find yes men. If you're going to publish it, you don't want yes men.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm not a big fan of yes men.
Well, that's a personality thing, right? If you're doing it for yourself,
I mean, if you're doing it for yourself, sure, but even then, like, I'd still want my own stuff to be
good.
Good. Yeah.
Like, that's a personality thing.
I can yes man my own stuff.
It's the exercise for some people. So yeah. I'm just not limiting them.
Fair enough.
But in general, I would not look for a yes man either. And sometimes you don't want to get negative stuff from people you like either. It's like, let me. My wife could be really hard on anything I do, but I don't necessarily want to get hit up in a negative way from her. So
allow me to throw another concept out there. Like, I'm not a fan of yes men. I am a fan of cheerleaders. And like my wife and I were discussing this the other day. I am a fantastic cheerleader. I believe in people, and I know how to point out to a person what they're ignoring about themselves and see their talents and let them know, acknowledge them, and tell them, look, you're really good at this. Like, you can do this. This is not impossible. This is something that you can learn to do and get great at if it's something you want to do. I'm very good at that because I do believe in people.
Yeah.
I think finding someone like that is invaluable. I'm still trying to come up with a better way to monetize my cheerleading abilities.
You become one of those text coaches.
I mean, I'm like really, I probably should get into some form of life coaching or motivational speaking.
I have a friend, and this is completely unrelated, but a potential job opportunity for anyone out there. And he does coaching via text. And I think it's through a website somewhere. I'd have to ask him, but literally, like, he has clients and they text him questions and he texts them answers. So, and I don't know enough to know if it's like all around coaching or if it's financial coaching or whatever. I think it's an all around kind of coaching thing, but I don't know if they even help you get clients, but I think they do, but they feed them to you and you get paid per text. So, that is one thought there for other people like Michael. Now, and remember too, if you get an editor, they're going to read it. They'll read it the most critically, but it's that's to me the most useful one-person readers, editors. If you have trouble putting the story together, there are developmental editors that can do that, or there are people who actually edit it, preparing it for publication. All the way to doing proofreading at the end, which is, just a version of it. So you're not going to get so much feedback from the people who are just adding punctuation at the end, but especially from a developmental editor or I think they call them a copy editor. They will actually give you real feedback to help make your work better. Somewhat of what you would like to get from beta readers, as they call them, which are people who are reading your book to see if what scenes work and what scenes don't work. But it's a lot more detailed and probably a little bit more market driven because of their experience in the industry. But readers, like I said, if you're not planning to publish it, have someone else read it. Now, some of you might just not want to do that, and maybe it's because you don't trust your own writing skills. There's actually an app I got a couple of years ago, and I've been paying for ever since, called Grammarly. And I do have an affiliate link, I think. So if you go to episode 291 in the show notes, I'll put it there. But Grammarly is a wonderful piece of software. It's not as complicated as something like Autocritic, which is supposed to try and do the same thing, but more for book editing. Grammarly will just help make sure your writing's clean. And it's kind of neat because you can actually pick the audience if you're trying to use emotion or not use emotion, and you can do some stuff where it'll help make your writing better beyond just being, probably a pretty proficient grammar tool. So, I've used it writing papers, and I've used it for creative writing. It's a great tool to use in writing, especially like if you're like me and you vomit out your first draft. You need something like Grammarly before you give it to anyone else, or it's really just not fair. Now, that does not replace an editor by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not too expensive either. There might even be a free version. I don't know. But it's worth checking out if you want to share with people, to make sure that you at least have decent punctuation and your language is consistent and pretty good going throughout. So it'll make sure that it's a clean read. It won't make that scene that's confusing better, but it will make it legible. So it's really worth checking out. And I do find if you do get it, don't get the plugins for Office. It doesn't work as good as if you just copy and paste your text into. There's an extension for your browser. You can click to open up a new document, copy and paste stuff in there, and that one is the better editor for some reason than the one that goes inside of Word. I don't know why. And I'm not talking about the word spelling and grammar check. That one doesn't work very well at all. At least not when I used to use it. So Grammarly just does that a lot better. Plus, it does a few other things that really make it better. A Thesaurus. I struggle putting this one in there even.
Really?
Like, everyone must know that you use a thesaurus.
It's still look, if it's a go-to thing to use for you, then it's a good mention.
Yeah, and a lot of times I like to go into the etymology of words, which is accessible typically through courses where you can start to figure out where that word come from. And sometimes it's a rabbit hole if you're like.
Yeah, I was actually just looking up some words the other day.
But it's a great tool. There are certain words people overuse, and it'll help you get rid of them. And sometimes, even if I have a really good vocabulary, but even with that though, I have certain words I go to more than others. And so when you're reading through something, it's like, okay, I started every transition sentence with however. It's kind of like on the show where I go however is my in writing. However, we'll move on. And the last one was one I just recently got introduced to, and there are other books like this for other things, but this one specifically.
No. I'm counting because you said 5 invaluable tools and you're up to number 7.
No.
And number 3 had
5,
3.
6, 7. Yes. So
yes. I'm just pointing it out.
Okay. The Emotion Thesaurus is actually a book from Angela Ackerman and Becca Poglis, I believe is how you would say her last name. I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well too, or if you go to Amazon, or if you go to gardul.com/Amazon, we'll get a little kickback if you buy it. But it's a great book because it's like a thesaurus, except it's not linking you to synonyms and antonyms. So just to give you the basic structure, you get the definition as they're using it in the book. And sometimes there are alternate definitions. There's one that they're typically focusing on. So like if I look at, I'm on the page for disbelief, they have one definition that they are working on to build the rest of the thesaurus. And then they talk about what are the physical signals that people can have in that state of mind. What are the mental responses they have in that state of mind? What are cues of acute or long-term disbelief, or whatever word that they're working on? What, if not dealt with, could this lead to? And so they have it going to denial, anger, overwhelm, and resignation as possible escalations for characters moving throughout. And the last one are cues of suppressed disbelief. So someone's trying to hide it. What are some cues that they would give off? And so it's a wonderful thing too, because sometimes, and I'm a dialogue heavy writer. A lot of times I'm thinking dialogue and I see the action in my head. A lot of times the action doesn't make it out onto paper. So a lot of the rewrites I have to do when I'm editing is to go through into conversations, and one, to break up the conversation a little bit more, but on the other hand, to allow the reader to understand some of the context of the conversation beyond the words. And then two, it also helps prevent you from saying, Fred looked at her with disbelief. Instead of saying Fred looked at her with disbelief, you can go look up the cues and go, which cue do I want this character to use for disbelief? And that way it's a little bit more subtle, but it I think it elevates the reading. And I think there's a lot of people, if you search, don't say, I forget the phrases. There's some phrase about that, don't say it.
Show it.
Show it, don't tell it.
Yeah, show it, don't tell it.
I think it's a Rush song too.
Show it, don't say it, or something like that.
But yeah,
no,
exactly.
show me, don't tell me.
Show me, don't tell me. Sorry, but
no. Please sing.
Oh my God, the downloads are going the wrong way. Yeah. So
remember that spike we were having, Jeff? It looks like a valley now.
Shoots and ladders, Michael.
It's an up and down game. We got to play the numbers.
We're gonna actually.
The numbers are saying don't sing.
That'd be great. We should play shoots and ladders for a let's play.
I was thinking you were gonna say let's do a karaoke episode. I don't think we could afford maybe like a rock band, like an impromptu rock band.
Get like a message from iTunes saying that we owe them 10,000 downloads.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you can't play any. These are all, copyrighted songs.
Actually, if you perform the songs,
oh really?
You can perform songs. You have to.
I'm in.
That's one of the things I've learned.
I've told you about the rock band parties that we used to have, right?
No.
Quick side story on Rock Band. When Rock Band came out and I had discovered it, like many people, it was like, oh my gosh, this is the most fun thing ever. It makes you feel like a rock superstar. So I had the whole band kit. I still do. It's in the closet somewhere. And I used to have parties that friends come over and we'd blast it out because tons of people who didn't play video games were like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. Mm-hmm. So one of the first couples, I had like 4 or 5 people over and it was like midnight and we're just blasting out and having a good old time. And then there's a knock on my door. Now I live in a 3-family house. So there's someone who lives on the second floor underneath of us and someone's knocking on the door. And I'm like, oh no, that's my neighbor. I'm like, it's like midnight. We're being really loud. And I open up the door and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, and he's a family man and a working man and he's super nice guy. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. He's bleary eyed. He's got big bags under his eyes. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. We'll turn it down. And my friends are like, come on in and play. This is great. Come have it, And I'm like, oh, we got to tone it down, guys. So I shut the door and we turn it down. And then I look at the clock. Now, I purposefully said it was like midnight because that's what I thought it was. When I looked at the clock, I discovered it was 3 a.m.
Oh, geez.
We had been playing all night long at like this ridiculous volume. And it's 3 I can't believe he waited that long.
Yeah.
To come upstairs and be like, guys, come on, let's wrap it up, or at least turn it down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. My wife is actually a huge Rock Band fan. I didn't like it, and it wasn't the game. It was like it literally just. I think between carpal tunnel from doing computer work or whatever,
you physically didn't like playing.
It hurt my hand. Yeah. So it's like I couldn't play it for very long, so I just never got into it. But my wife would play that for a while.
What cracked me up is having friends over that were legitimate guitarists who could play the song on a real guitar but could not do it.
Could not do it.
Yeah, they'd get so frustrated. They'd be like, "I can play this song. Like, I actually know how to play this guitar part, and I can't follow this stupid Simon."
Well, obviously not,
game.
Bob.
Yeah, right. Get back in the studio, Bob.
Show me, don't tell me. All right. So, but that is it. So, as a quick review, my 5 invaluable tools: notebooks, creative friends, Google, great courses, and email. Remember, that's only one.
That's only one.
Readers.
So that's up to, we're up to 3. That's 4.
Grammarly, Thesaurus, and Emotion Thesaurus.
Okay.
So that's 5.
That's 5.
That's 5. I'm not going to even change the headline either. I'm just going
to don't change it. Keep it. No, I love it.
2 bonus ones at the end there, folks. We'll see.
And I don't remember when we first started. Before we hit record, I had 1 or 2 that I wanted to tack onto this, and I don't remember what they were.
Mine were so overwhelmingly good. That's
what it is. I was wrapped up in awe of your ideas, Jeff, as I always am.
Always am. Yes.
Always am.
And notice Michael is not capable of being sarcastic, so that is.
True. I'm still wrapping my head around sarcasm. I've read about it on the internet.
That was more irony.
Like that. So do we have a? I'm trying to find. Do we have a blah 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 world builders task
yes,
somewhere here?
I'll do the world builders task here.
Okay.
The real world task. Write a paragraph about the last time you got angry.
I cannot believe you just said that. Why did you say that?
It's written down.
I know, but why?
Because it's what I wanted people to do.
Why?
Because I wanted them to describe how they acted or how they felt. No saying it. You have to just describe it.
My wife is doing a course right now,
mm-hmm.
and I shit you not,
mm-hmm.
she asked me 2 days ago to write what it was like for me when she gets angry.
Oh, really?
Really?
Don't write about what I do, people. I don't want.
Oh, you want me to write what it's like when what about when I get angry at you? Can I write that?
You can write how you. Yeah.
Okay.
Like when I call you Michael instead of Mike, I know you get pissed.
No, I don't. I prefer Michael.
Oh, really? I never knew that.
Okay. You know what's funny is that it's a thing at work.
Mm-hmm.
When we had hired one of my assistants, he was like, the first thing the boss told me was, "Do not call you Mike." and then that assistant's brother also came working for the company, and his brother told him, "Don't call him Mike, call him Michael." It's like they put more gravity on it than I intend. That's fine. I don't mind. It
reminds me of the old.
Michael.
Do you remember the old band Scatterbrain?
No.
They had one song that was popular. I don't even remember which one was popular, but I had
I'll have to look it up. Anyway,
and they had this great song. It was sort of a Doors style sort of parody kind of thing called
mm-hmm.
No, that's a different song. Drunken Milkman. That's a good song, but that's not the one I'm thinking about. There's another song that they have, Don't Call Me Dude.
Don't Call Me Dude. Okay.
And it's literally like this guy singing and he's like, "Don't call me dude." He just keeps getting more and more frustrated the entire song until he loses it as the end of the song. So funny band.
Scatterbrained?
Scatterbrain. Yeah.
Scatterbrain. I'll look it up.
And I did want to point out too, I was actually it's going to be confusing now. You figure we had a Michael, a Mike, and a Jeff all join. Bound to call, be confusing for all those people not called Michael or Jeff. So if you're in the Undercroft, choose if you want to be called Michael or Jeff or Mike. Because Mike is a legitimate character of the show. Just it's not Michael.
I've yet to meet this other character. The real world task is to read something. I am currently reading a bunch of things. I'm reading book number 5 in the Avery Cates series, which is interesting because they're pulling characters back from 2-3 books ago, which is kind of hard to remember because I read the other books literally years ago at this point. I am reading Harry Potter for the first time.
Oh, really?
Yes. I own all the books now. I got them from like a church sale, and I got all the books, each one for $1. And most of them are the hardcover versions.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what, I can do this, and I'll buy these. I was always supposed to read these and never got around to it, so I'm reading them now. But I read them to Sarah. So like at bedtime, I will read Harry Potter to her.
Okay.
So I am reading it, and she is getting a book on tape live.
I actually read and get the paper book too. And here's why. Same thing for like writing. The physical book in your hand makes it get into your brain better. So buy physical books when possible.
And
I'm actually reading The Wizard of Once right now by Crescenda Cal, which I don't know how you will actually know what that book is. But she's actually the author who wrote How to Train Dragons, which I never read or saw the TV shows. But I was looking for a book, and I picked up the first book, The Wizard of Once.
How to Train Dragons? Is that tied to How to Train Your Dragon?
How to Train Your Dragon?
The DreamWorks.
Yes, that's derived from her work.
Really?
Yeah.
Those movies are excellent.
That's the reason I saw it was from the same author.
I did not know they pulled those from books. I
haven't seen those yet. I do want to see them. It's one of those things on my list.
Watch them. They're totally worth watching.
There's actually a TV show on.
There is a TV show now. Yep.
Universal as well. Don't know how good it is, but I'm sure it's enjoyable. So.
And I mean, I think
her characterization.
I think Eric can watch them.
Yeah, so do I, but that doesn't mean we'd survive the showing. So,
how's that?
Because my wife probably would not, because there's fantasy violence. So.
Oh, well, there is fantasy violence. Like
they say it's around 8 is when kids start to be able to really distinguish the difference between fantasy violence and actual violence. So I'll have to hold off. Can't get this character yet. But yeah, no, go read a book, especially a fictional book. Obviously, you're all here because you love fantasy, so make it a fantasy book. Go look at our groups of interviews that out there and grab their books. Or
Michael says, "Don't be afraid to look at science fiction."
Michael's
science fiction. Love science fiction.
Science fiction is great. I typically prefer to consume it via.
It's ironic because I love fantasy so much, but I read way more science fiction than I do fantasy.
Yeah, I'm actually I've read a few things that are science fiction. I've never liked them as much as now. Some of them are really good. Don't get me wrong, like Philip K. Dick is great. Yeah. So yeah, no, I've actually read quite a bit of science fiction, but in general, I actually prefer fantasy in the written form. I typically watch more science fiction than I read. So at least at this point,
I should read. I haven't read any of the Witcher books. I haven't read any of the Game of Thrones books, the Song of Fire and Ice, and I've never read any of. There's another big series that I think you're a big fan of. What are your big fantasy series that you like? There's a big one that you've mentioned before that I'm aware of, but I've never read.
Lord of the Rings.
No, I've read Lord of the Rings.
I don't know what I read if it's big or not. That's the problem. So
no, it's a big older series. Somebody recently,
I guess Wheel of Time, or
that's definitely one of them. Somebody recently recommended it to me, and I was like, "Oh yeah, Kingslayer. It's something like that. I think I know the listeners are shaming me right now, and I deserve it. I'm sorry, I'm not getting this right because I do not remember. Are you looking it up right now?
I'm seeing if there's a Kingslayer fantasy.
I think it's King Killer or King. It has something to do with the main character, like not to be confused.
Are you talking about like maybe the Chronicles of Icewind? Maybe. I mean, I read a lot of Dragonlance.
Well, what is the Chronicles of the thing Ice? Where you're just saying there?
There's the Kingslayer Chronicles.
Kingslayer Chronicles. That is it. That's it.
Yeah, that's some of the old D&D books, and a lot of those are really good. Like
I've heard good things about them.
Yeah. No, I mean, you figure like authors like I think George R.R. Martin started there.
That would make sense. The term Kingslayer comes up in Game of Thrones left and right. So.
I don't know if he was in that part of it or not. And I could be wrong with George R.R. Martin, but like R.A. Salvador is a huge fantasy writer right now. Obviously, I mean, he still goes back to D&D books occasionally. So, a lot of
for sources, or he references old books.
He still writes. He's just recently come out with some stuff there too. So like Archmage came out a couple of years ago, the Drizzt creator. So one of the most famous Dungeons and Dragons characters of all time. From that era, at least. I don't know how well people know him if they weren't involved in Dungeons and Dragons in that era. Unless, of course, they found his books. So, I like historical fantasy as well too, like alt Earth. Stuff. It doesn't even have to be all Earth. It could just be like we're trying to explain why some things happen with magic, unless it's too obvious. Like, the reason the Americans lost this battle was because of magic. No, I don't like that. I don't like underdogs winning just because of magic. But I especially like old, ancient or medieval settings with magic weaved into it. I do dig that kind of stuff. So. Even though I haven't read nothing like that in a while, there's an old one I remember reading about Scipio Africanus. I don't even remember who the author was. I really liked it, and then I never bought any of the other books. I don't even remember, which is a shame. I'm ashamed of myself. So please go to facebook.com/groups/Undercroft and mock me.
And also go to www.garduel.com/Amazon and buy yourself a new fantasy book.
Excellent. We will see you all next week. Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anvil.
We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends.
And so would they.
If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting.
Take them to Stitcher or iTunes, or best of all, just send them to our website, www.garduel.com.
That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.